an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Shadow and Bone, chapters 21, 22, and after. In these chapters, my little hunch about the connection that Alina had with that stag turns out to be more right than I thought. It had much more of an effect than I was expecting, and I like this as a solution, and it makes sense to me. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Jaime is here in the chat. She says, am I the only one here? She's just typed in all caps, hello. You don't have to type it again in all caps. That doesn't make you louder, Jaime. Thank you very much to Jaime for commissioning this episode. I am just so startled that we're at the end of this book already. And I know I said that before, but like still, I really am. This book ends in a moment of like just huge transition. And while that's a really good place to end a book a lot of times, many times you get an author feeling the need to give things a little bit more of like a wrap up than Leigh Bardugo did for this one, which I'm fine with. I actually kind of like it when they don't feel the need to do that, because I think it is something that as a reader, I can sense this like, oh, okay, so we're going to tie things. Okay, gotcha. And I sort of like that she doesn't do that. Oh, Miss T is here as well. Hello, Ms. D. So chapter 21 begins right where chapter 22 left off, with Genya leaving and in tears because she has basically betrayed Alina, but like they all have, but they all have really good reasons. And Alina's not even like mad at Genya, although later on she isn't sure if she can call Genya a friend or not. And that's always a weird place to be, where when you feel like you thought you knew what your relationship with somebody was, and then something happens, and it's not even as simple as being like, well, I have decided we're not friends anymore because of what you did. It's more like, I thought I knew where we were, and you clearly had a whole different idea. So now I have to retroactively recalculate where we stand with each other and like recontextualize conversations we had where I thought we were being just cool friends who were honest with each other. And now I know that maybe that's not what you were doing at all. And that is a really shitty feeling of just being like, man, did I just completely misread all of our relationship? You know? And she gets interrupted by Ivan coming in. Can I just tell you guys how much I have grown to hate Ivan? Ivan is one of those dudes who is just such a... He's always there and always just annoying and smug. He's like when you get a splinter and you kind of like are in a position for whatever reason where you don't have time to go to the house and get a pair of tweezers, and so you kind of have to like get along for the rest of the day, and you just keep picking at it, and it just doesn't, you can't get it out, and it doesn't even hurt that bad until you try and grab something with the tip of your fingers, and then all of a sudden you're like, ow, ah, fuck, that's there, I forgot, shit. And then you like get home and you finally get the splinter out. And even though it's such a relief, there's a part of you that it's like, yeah, but it still hurts. Like, it's still there, though. Ivan is just a fucking annoyance, man. You know? And, like, sure, he's a Grisha with his own abilities, but it's his proximity to the fucking Darkling and his, like, there's a weakness of mind there for me, of him really believing that the Darkling like has it all figured out that I immediately lose respect for. Like, whenever somebody is being told that a person is up to some shit, and granted, like, I don't want somebody to believe anything that they hear, but whenever they're being told something that's like kind of reasonable or fits in with like evidence that they have, and they just immediately discount it with like, no, but they aren't that kind of person. He has bought into like an idea of who this guy is and what he represents in a way that feels so naive and childish to me. And it's like I'm almost embarrassed for him, you know, like, guy, you're a fucking grown ass man and you are acting like a teenage acolyte to, you know, some fucking priestess or somebody who really will grow up and begin to know better. And right now you just kind of feel sorry for because you know they have a rough road of sudden realization ahead of them. You can't even feel that way for this guy because he is a grown ass man who should have been there already. And now I'm just like, well, that's your problem. And he has this moment where he like smirks at her as he takes her to the Darkling's tent. And I can't tell. I think that's supposed to be his like insinuation that the two of them are going to bang, her and the Darkling. Like, I don't know if Ivan thinks that she is interested still because like it's been mentioned in front of everybody in a previous chapter how she like, you know, had a moment with the Darkling. So I'm wondering if that's what Ivan's thinking, or if does Ivan think that because she's like got this collar on her that she can be compelled? I don't know. Like, that's even creepier, but I don't think that's it. So she goes in and the Darkling, in his perfect, like a perfect display of exactly who he is here to fucking push Alina's buttons. And this is the thing. He is just a dickbag because he can be. Like, she can't do anything. And he is only trying to amuse himself. Is really the vibe I get. Like, when she is first summoned here, you think that he wants something from her specifically. And then you grow to realize he is planning to do what he's planning to do. And he had that plan before she ever showed up, and he was going to carry it through exactly as he had already planned it, no matter what she said. But he just wanted to exercise his power over her a little bit before he did it. He just wants to twist the knife and toy with her love for Mal. And this is what's sort of interesting to me. I can't help but wonder if the Darkling was sort of in love with Alina and if he's jealous of Mal. There's a vibe I get from him when he's talking, because she, you know, he says something about how she betrayed him, and that he says that all she had to hear was like some whispered words from Bagda, and then all of a sudden she just turned off and ran off and gave up everything. Insinuating, essentially, you were the faithless one from the beginning. Why do you think you deserved my trust? So it's not that I should have been honest with you and you like have a right to be angry with me for lying. It's you should have proven to me that you were worth being honest with, and you did not do that. So whatever happens is your fault because you failed the test. And I really think he was hoping that she passed the test because he wants her. And I don't even feel that in a, like, I'm romantically in love with you kind of way. I mean, he is a possessive man. He is somebody who likes to own things. He's a collector in a way. And I think he sees a symmetry with the fact that he is the Darkling and she is the Sun Summoner. And there's a like public role of the two of them being a couple that he just likes the idea of and feels that she should have been willing to take on. It's like he thought that they had a kind of understood social contract that she never agreed to and was going to go for because she liked him, but not because of like the teaming of power. And that is something that I think he is very resentful of, that she doesn't see him as the end all be all of a potential mate. She saw him as a very powerful and charismatic and handsome man, and realizes that like there are other powerful, charismatic, handsome men out there, and he's not necessarily at the like top of her. And I think he's kind of vain, right? Like that idea that he isn't at the very top of her list, or indeed all of her list. I think he just doesn't really understand how that can be. And Mal, like, there's a look of longing she describes in his eyes at one point. And I think it's him almost wondering whether or not he can ever have what she has. It's not even about her in that moment. I think there's a longing that's for more than just her. It's a longing for, like, I think the Darkling is like aware that he is all on his own. And while he has resigned himself to that, I think meeting Alina and her having the abilities that she has perhaps gave him like a flare of hope that he could have something that he didn't think was ever going to be for him. And like I said, I'm not trying to like make us feel sorry for the Darkling. Like he's a real piece of shit. But there is this like isolation that you can feel on him because there's nobody out there like him. And while that's what he enjoys about his position, there are going to be drawbacks to anything. And this is a guy who's just greedy and wants it all. So I think that's, again, a thing, like a bit of resentment on his part. It's not like, oh, I wish I could experience love. I'm so lonely. I think I wish I could experience love because you can. And I mean, look at fucking me. You can, but I can't. That doesn't seem right at all. Does that seem right to you? Like, he wants to be able to understand and experience and have some of everything. And that means that he's never going to be happy because there is always another thing. That's just how life works. And if there wasn't always another thing, there wouldn't be a lot of point to what we do. But anyway, he finally tells her because she says, tell me what I should say in order to save his life. And he says, tell me how much you love him and beg for his life. And then he says, why should I? And she says, the collar can't give what you want. I have no choice but to serve you, but if Mal comes to harm, I will never forgive you. I will fight you any way that I can. I will spend every waking minute looking for a way to end my life, and eventually I'll succeed. But show him mercy. Let him live, and I will serve you gladly. I will spend the rest of my days proving my gratitude. Which, to me, it reads as a promise to basically become his concubine. And he, kind of looks at her. And this is the moment that I found interesting. He cocked his head to one side, a small skeptical smile playing about his lips. Then the smile disappeared, replaced by something I didn't recognize, something that looked almost like longing. And then he says, mercy. And this is part of why I'm not entirely sure about this, because the longing, is that purely sexual? Is it, I wish I could be merciful. I wonder what that's like. I don't feel like he wishes he could be merciful, but there's also just curiosity and wanting to know what would happen if I did choose that path that I'm definitely not going to choose. And he kisses her, and she's really annoyed because when he does, she feels a response, even though she's like repulsed by him. It's just a combination of things happening because of the power that they each have and probably the effect of the collar. And he tells her, after he stops kissing her, he tells Ivan, I should say, to take her to the cells and let her see her tracker. And he then says, yes, I can be merciful. And you think he's like, all right, let her see her tracker and, you know, we'll see what happens. Maybe we can get some information out of her. Maybe we can keep holding him. But he says, tomorrow we enter the shadow fold. And when we do, I will feed your friend to the Volcra and you will watch him die. And this really, like, it shouldn't have caught me so by surprise. I should have known that there was no room for him to do anything else. But I am thinking there are more books, and I don't expect her to be able to overpower his hold on her in this book. Everything kind of went like reverse of how I thought. I thought we would end this book with her in his clutches, but Mal dead, or Mal still imprisoned. And instead, they get away. And her being free of him already, I didn't think that was going to happen. I feel pretty okay with that, though, because, like, it's one of those things that if you had told me, oh, but she'll get away from him by the end, in summary, it sounds too quick. It sounds like, well, that just, we barely got a chance to, you know, feel what this is really going to be like. On the other hand, her being at his mercy is so bleak an experience that I really don't know how much more of it I could have taken. Like, another book that I have covered, or a series, The Earthseed, there was meant to be 3, but the third one was never published. Or I don't think she even wrote it, actually. But the second book, there's a couple of chapters of them being enslaved, and enslaved in a way that is truly horrifying. It's a kind of slavery with like an electronic collar that can give you pleasure as well as pain. So it turns you into this weird addict as well. That is some of the most difficult reading I have ever had to go through. And I had like nightmares after. And this was giving me low key flashbacks to that. And I was like prepared to sit through it because it felt important and I wasn't going to begrudge that. But I can't lie. When I realized that we weren't going to be starting the next book with her under his thumb, I felt just huge relief. I just didn't know that I was going to be able to like get through it. And she like goes for his eyes. She like really launches herself at him and calls him a murderer and a monster. And he's just like, yeah, I don't know. And she says that she hates him. And he says, you'll tire of hate soon enough. You'll tire of everything. You will wear that collar for the rest of your very, very long life. Fight me as long as you're able. You will find I have far more practice with eternity. Which, that is a pretty boss fucking speech. Like, the idea that he not only intends for her to live, but to live for a really long time, as he has. And he feels nothing but interest at watching her slowly break. That is a real bastard POV. That's rough. And Ivan, as he's carrying Alina out, well, he's not he's sort of like half carrying her because she's sobbing. He tells her to knock it off because somebody's going to see her, because don't forget, she's supposed to be keeping up this appearance that she's like working willingly with the Darkling and that she was away on some sort of like retreat, getting stronger and the whole thing. And Ivan is like, dude, you're going to completely blow it. And she rightfully says, well, why do I care? You're going to kill Mal, whatever. But Ivan immediately is like, well, fine, you don't want to see him, then I guess we just won't do it. And she's like, no, never mind. I take it back. So they bring her down to the cells. She has to wear like a robe because they don't want anyone seeing her go down there and asking what the hell the Sun Summoner is doing going to the jail. And as we walked between the barracks and tents, I could sense a strange tension crackling through the camp. The soldiers we passed seemed jumpy, and a few glared at Ivan with blatant hostility. I wondered how the First Army felt about the apparat's sudden rise to power. So this was a little bit confusing. The apparat is the one that has basically... He seems to be on the side of the Darkling, but she has suspected that maybe he actually isn't. So the apparat is sort of part of like the takeover. And I guess Ivan is supposed to be, because of his proximity to the Darkling, is supposed to be like part of that takeover, and the soldiers are part of the original power structure who feel that Ivan is part of the company that like came and sort of usurped them. Am I reading that right? I think I got that, but it's just a little bit, the apparat is sort of such a sketchy character for me. And I mean that in every sense of the word, that I forget about his place in everything. So they call him a bloodletter at one point, which I kind of liked. Let's see. Ivan led me down a hallway lined with mostly empty cells. And finally, her and Mal. And they hug each other like through the bars. He says, I can't believe he let you come. To which she's like, yeah, about that. And he's like, oh, fuck. When is he gonna kill me? Because he immediately, like he knows. And she says tomorrow, and he's like, okay. And she sort of starts laughing. It's like, are you serious? That's your response? And he says something about how if he'd have been stronger, he would have driven the knife through your heart, but he still doesn't regret it. Which, look, if he's still, the thing is, she says, I wish you had. He says, well, I don't. And a little bit of me was kind of like, that's really nice for you, Al. Like, she's in captivity now, and they don't know she's going to find a way to get out of this pretty quickly. And they don't know she's going to find a way out of this at all. But the idea that he's just like, well, I'm glad I didn't, even though she's going to be subjected to this. I'm like, just keep it to yourself, man. She just said she would have rather been dead. She wishes you had. It's her life. Don't. Just keep it to yourself, Mel. Just don't say anything. You were the one who even brought it up. Anyway. She starts to bring up what the Darkling said about the two of them. And she tries to tell him, basically, I never actually slept with him. And he says it doesn't matter. And she says that she doesn't think she believes him. And I liked this. Maybe I don't believe it yet either, not completely, but it's the truth. I don't care if you dance naked on the roof of the little palace with him. I love you, Alina, even the part of you that loved him. And I love that line. Like, acknowledging that there is a piece of you. It's not like love just comes and goes away. Like, there are going to be people that you thought you were in love with, or maybe really were in love with, that you really feel nothing for. But there are going to be people that there is still a little something there, even though you hate it. And you have to be willing to take that as well, you know? And I don't know. I thought that was a nice way to say that. And He kissed me through the bars, the cold iron pressing against my cheek as his lips met mine. We stayed together that last night. We talked about the orphanage, the angry rasp of Anakuya's voice, the taste of stolen cherry cordial, the smell of the new-mown grass in our meadow, how we'd suffered in the heat of summer and sought out the cool comfort of the music room's marble floors, the journey we'd made together on the way to do our military service, the Suli violins we'd heard our first night away from the only home either of us could remember. I told him the story of the day I'd been mending pottery with one of the maids in the kitchens at Karemzin, waiting for him to return from one of the hunting trips that had taken him from home more and more frequently. I'd been 15, standing at the counter, vainly trying to glue together the jagged pieces of a blue cup. When I saw him crossing the fields, I ran to the doorway and waved. He caught sight of me and broke into a jog. I had crossed the yard to him slowly, watching him draw closer, baffled by the way my heart was skittering around in my chest. Then he'd picked me up and spun me in a circle, and I'd clung to him, breathing in his sweet, familiar smell, shocked by how much I'd missed him. Dimly, I'd been aware that I still had a shard of the blue cup in my hand, that it was digging into my palm, but I didn't want to let it go. When he finally set me down and ambled off to the kitchen to find his lunch, I had stood there, my palm dripping blood, my head still spinning, knowing that everything had changed. This is a really interesting little, and I like it a lot. It's a really it's so incredibly vivid because of the variety of senses that she includes. Like, first talking about the things that they are discussing, and she describes the taste of things, the sound of things, the smell of things. But then this is a similar thing, talking about what she was doing. Seeing him through the window, smelling him as she's holding him and clinging to him, and then the very, very sharp memory, literally, of a shard of broken pottery cutting her skin. And there being this, like, gorgeous, emotional moment with a little bit of pain, which is fucking exactly correct. And how that moment was when she was like, something is happening. And I would love to hear from anybody who has, like, developed feelings for a longtime friend, if this is sort of what happened with you, because I've never experienced this. I always am attracted to a person right away. Like, the one sort of exception was Ruben, who I, like, went on a couple of blind dates with and was just sort of like, I don't know. And eventually he, like, grew on me. But I am not somebody who, like, has long time friendships with people that I was a kid with. Like, that I moved, like, when I was, I think, 11, and moved into a new town, and it was like a lot of people that I didn't know, and I wasn't really friends with boys. I had all girl friends, and eventually I got a boyfriend as a freshman year in high school, and we started off as boyfriend girlfriend. We were not really friends. We, like, met immediately, were like, what's up? And that was how that went. So the idea of, like, suddenly realizing that you have romantic feelings for somebody that you have known a while is such a strange idea to me, that I feel like it would be really scary, you know, to feel that, like, shift happen in a relationship that you kind of thought you had a handle on. And I'm somebody who doesn't deal super well with change of, like, fundamentals of my life. So having a really important friendship that begins to slip into territory like that sounds really, like, frightening to me. And it sounds like it was, you know, the story is just kind of like her not really knowing what to do next, because she can see he doesn't necessarily feel the same way about her, at least not yet. We fell asleep on the floor, cheeks pressed together through the bars, hands clasped tight. I didn't want to sleep. I wanted to savor every last moment with him. And she dreams of the stag and dreams of Mal being in the glade with her. And it's him that had his throat cut. And it's just like this awful, you know. The next thing I knew, I was waking to the sound of the gate being opened. Mal had made me promise not to cry. He said it would only make it harder on him, so I swallowed my tears. I kissed him one last time and let Ivan lead me away. So she has to go and get changed and make herself look presentable for this big fucking charade that is about to happen. And Genya is dressing her hair and fastening it into place with golden pins. And this winds up being pretty important later because it's like the only thing that they have to actually make any money and, you know, pay for things as they flee. But the pins in her hair, when she said golden, I thought usually when things say golden rather than gold, it means that it is gold looking. But this is meant to be actual gold. And they're pinning her hair up so that everyone will be able to see the collar she's wearing, which for a moment I was like, what the fuck? And then I realized nobody understands about the collar. Nobody knows that this is the Darkling's hold over her. They think she went and found what she needed for her collar to be her amplifier. It turns out that is what it was. But right now, it just seems like this is him having ownership of her. And so it's this sick joke right now that everybody's going to be looking at this thinking how powerful she is and how like wonderful for her this was. And we know that the Darkling is going to be fucking smirking to himself, looking at it and knowing that this is his lock, you know? And that is just, ugh, that makes me so angry. When I realized this when I was first reading it, I was like, oh, I hate it. Ivan led me to the Grisha tent where I took my place by the Darkling's side. I knew that my friends were watching me, whispering, wondering what was wrong. They probably thought I was nervous about entering the fold. They were wrong. I wasn't nervous or frightened. I wasn't anything anymore. And she talks for a while about how she is pretty much numb, and eventually something breaks through that, and she's kind of annoyed because the numbness was by far preferable to what she winds up feeling once there is some unease that's able to like break through that wall. So she gets on this skiff, and there are all of these men. There are Fjerdan ambassadors. There are people from Shuhan. There are some people from Kerch. An envoy of the king stood with them in full military dress. And she realizes that the Darkling wanted to get the proper audience together. And that was part of why he had delayed the trip, because he wanted to make sure that word got out and the correct people were going to be here to see this. And of course, when I say to see this, I'm thinking that he's going to show them, like, I didn't think he was going to go in there and just clear the entire fold. I thought he would show that he could, that they could allegedly, but not actually complete it. And instead it goes in a much darker direction. I still had like a dark idea, but I didn't think that he was going to expand it for sure. I almost wondered if he might not be able to somehow contain it and use it as like a weapon, you know, be able to, and that is sort of what he can do. As it turns out, he can sort of use it as a weapon, but I was thinking like a bomb, you know, like he was able to somehow pull the fold into a container somehow and bring it somewhere and like open the container and let it loose somewhere else. And instead it's something that he has to like physically move, as if it were like the blob, you know, like he has to push it wider. He can't seem to like pick it up and move it around. So they go, let's see, I had welcomed the chance to prove myself, and I cringed when I thought of it, to please the Darkling. I had dreamed of this moment standing by his side. I had wanted to believe in the destiny he'd laid out for me, that the orphan no one wanted would change the world and be adored for it. And I like that moment of her remembering the things that she had wanted, and a combination of like still understanding why she felt the way she did, and a bit of embarrassment at feeling, just with her hindsight, realizing how mistaken she was. It's just, that is growing up for you. And And they drift in the black for a while, and then the Darkling says burn. And the Inferni on either side let some fire loose. And everybody realizes that the Darkling is trying to let the Volcra know where they are. Because the whole thing is to just like, try your best to fucking navigate and don't let them know you're there and be as quiet as possible. But they hear the Volcra shrieks, and a bunch of people begin to cry or scream, or guards are like trying to get their rifles out. And when they were almost upon us, the Darkling gripped my arm and simply said, now. That invisible hand took hold of the power inside me, and I felt it stretch, reaching through the darkness of the fold, seeking the light. It came to me with a speed and fury that nearly knocked me from my feet, breaking over me in a shower of brilliance and warmth. The fold was alight, as bright as noon, as if its impenetrable darkness had never been. I saw a long reach of blanched sand. Hulks of what looked like shipwrecks dotted the dead landscape, and above it all, a teeming flock of Volcra. They screamed in terror, their writhing gray bodies gruesome in the bright sunlight. This is the truth of him, I thought, as I squinted in the dazzling light. And then he says, make a path. I let the fold close in around us as I focused the light, making a channel. The Volcra fled into the dark, and I could hear them crying in rage and confusion as if from behind an impenetrable curtain. So they speed through on this like channel of light, and they get to the other side where she can even smell the sea. There are dock workers, like reminder that it's all dry docks because they're on the sand, but that's what they are called. And the skiff slows down. She thinks that they are going to get to one of the docks, and, and all of a sudden he signals, and she suddenly realizes what it is he is about to do. And he claps his hands, and it says, when it met the darkness of the fold, the darkness rippled out from his hands. When it met the darkness of the fold, a rumbling sound rose up out of the dead sands. The black walls of the path I'd created pulsed and swelled. The rumble grew to a roar. The fold shook and trembled around us and then burst forward in a terrible cascading tide. So this darkness basically turns into a fucking tidal wave and just dunks right over the docks and the village and all of the people. And all of the Volcra who had been trying to get at the ship and couldn't because there was this like stream of light on it are like, oh, sweet, but we can get them though. And they go after all of these people. And Alina is trying desperately to fight back and expand the light to include these people and protect them, and she can't do it. And she is just watching them get fucking butchered, basically. And the Darkling turns and looks at everybody and gets this real smug smile, and he stops the darkness from pushing forward. And she realizes that what he's doing is basically saying, see how easy that was. I could do that to all of you. How much are you willing to sacrifice? She closes the path. I pulled the light back until it rested around the skiff like a glowing dome. And everyone, is doing that like real feeble sort of like, you can't do this. And the thing about this, a part of me is like, come on guys, you can do better than just, how dare you, the king. Clearly he does not care. You all know he brought you here to see this. He doesn't think the king can do shit to him, and he is apparently correct. So I am frustrated by their response, but then there's a part of me that's like, what did I want them to do? It doesn't feel like any of the people in this delegation were Grisha. And all of the Grisha that he has with him seem to mostly agree with his tactics here. The Grisha have felt like second-class citizens, and they seem to be into it. Even though he's a real piece of shit, they feel like he's fighting for them. So nobody here, if they like decide to make a point of disagreeing with him on this, nobody here has a fucking leg to stand on. And they could protest loudly because, you know, she gets very upset a little bit later when nobody is on her side. But I don't really know what it was she was wanting them to do. Anything is probably what she would say if you asked her. I wanted them to do literally anything. And I totally get that in theory. But I mean, we'll get there. I'm getting ahead of myself. So he says, peace on my terms is what we're going to get. Or your precious mountains and your saint-forsaken tundra will simply cease to exist. I knew that he meant every word. The Darkling would not hesitate. He would not grieve. His darkness would consume the world, and he would never waver. Tell the story of what you've seen today. Tell everyone that the days of fear and uncertainty are over. The days of endless fighting are over. Tell them that you saw a new age begin. Well, finally, it comes time for him to execute Mal. And Mal gets thrown over the side. The light is still on him, so he's safe for a second. But the Darkling tells her to pull it back, and she tries to stop. And then all of a sudden, it's Mal that sort of turns it around for her as she's looking and realizing. She lets him, I say let, she isn't able to resist to the point that he is able to stay in the light the whole time. He gets swallowed by darkness for a moment, and she hears screaming as the Volcra begin to attack him. And later on, he's got blood and injuries, you know, like he doesn't get away unscathed. But she is able to get it together before too much harm is done. The memory of the stag reared up before me, so vivid that for a moment the snowy glade swam into my vision, the image of it transposed over the barren landscape of the fold. Finally, I understood why the stag had come to me every night in my dreams. I had thought the stag was haunting me, a reminder of my failure and the price my weakness would exact, but I was wrong. The stag had been showing me my strength, not just the price of mercy, but the power it bestowed. And mercy was something the Darkling would never understand. I had spared the stag's life. The power of that life belonged to me as surely as it belonged to the man who had taken it. I gasped as understanding flooded through me, and I felt that invisible grip falter. My power slid back into my hands. Once more, I stood in Bagra's hut, calling the light for the first time, feeling it rush toward me, taking possession of what was rightfully mine. This was what I had been born for. I would never let anyone separate me from it again. And the Darkling, for his part, is like, what the fuck? And he tries to send little flickers of darkness toward her. And she is able to just totally dissipate them. And I love this moment. She has a fucking sword made out of light. Dope. It's a lightsaber, y'all. This is really cool. I like it. With an ear-splitting crack, one of the skiff's masts split in two. People bleated in panic and scattered as the broken mast fell to the deck, the thick wood gleaming with burning light. And the Darkling tries to tell her, "You're not a murderer." And she's like, aren't I? Because I'm pretty sure you just made that a falsehood, sir. I'm pretty sure you just made me murder a bunch of people. So it's weird that you say that. But you're wrong. And this is when she starts yelling to people, it's not too late to stop him. Help me. But no one moved. Soldier and Grisha alike stood frozen on the deck. They were all too afraid of him and afraid of a world without his protection. And look, I would like to register. Regarding the soldiers and the Grisha, they really could have done something. I don't know what it would have looked like because I am not entirely sure what the Darkling's ability is to use his power in an offensive way. Like we've seen him, he can cut people with it, I guess. So they know that, right? And I guess that would be like, I'm just not sure how many people he can use that on at once is really my question. Could he be overwhelmed by enough people? Or would he be able to take them all down with like a single swipe, like a scythe going through wheat, you know? Because if it's the latter, I am not as mad at everybody as I would be otherwise. I can understand not necessarily in this moment wanting to jump on that fucking wagon and just hitch my horses to it. At the same time, you are kind of literally in a life and death situation here, guys. And maybe either way, you're kind of screwed. So pick the one that's like, you know, better because it's showing some sort of care about human life. I'm just saying, just a thought. So she stands there waiting for somebody to react. Nobody is going to help her. And then she's like, all right, you know what? Fuck y'all. And she jumps over the side and she lets the light go out. We were plunged into darkness. People wailed, and above us I heard the Volcra screeching. My outstretched hands struck the railing. I ducked under it and hurled myself onto the sand, rolling to my feet and running blindly toward Mal as I threw the light ahead of me in an arc. This bitch leaves everybody to die. And you know what? Fuck them. Fuck 'em. Good for you, girl. You're doing amazing, sweetie. I cannot at all be mad at Alina for this in any way. That is not to say that I won't understand that this literally haunts her for the rest of her life, because if it didn't, she would not be a protagonist. But this is a profoundly understandable decision she makes here. And nobody was willing to stand up for her, never mind to him. And I can totally understand just being like, I wash my hands of all of you then. You know what? You guys are not interested in doing the right thing now. Why am I going to keep you around to keep doing the wrong thing later when it, like, you know, it's just, and she hears like them shooting at her. And the Darkling yells, hold your fire. We need her alive. And then you can't run from me, Alina. And I have to admit, I was very disappointed to hear him yelling to her, because once I realized that he was able to talk and like, there's no sound to his voice that implies he is stressing or that he is fighting or anything, then I realized that he probably was going to survive this. And I was kind of hoping, even though there's another couple books, that maybe he wouldn't make it. But it seems that he's going to make it. And I don't know how. He doesn't seem like he's immune to the Volcra. But maybe he was able to use the knife, the darkness knife, to protect himself from them. I don't know. And he says, you can't leave us all here to die. If you take this step, you know where it will lead. And she's sort of like trying not to laugh, because she's like, yeah, I fucking know. Like, he's trying to tell her some shit like she is not aware. And then he tries to throw the concept of mercy in her face. And he's like, you asked me for mercy. And is this what you meant when you said that? And she's like, yeah, tit for tat. I feel like this is mercy the way that you talk about it. So why not? I raised my hand and brought it down in a blazing arc, slashing through the air. An earth-shaking crack echoed through the fold as the sand skiff split in half. Raw screams filled the air, and the Volcra shrieked in their frenzy. Yikes. So it's not that she just leaves them there. She leaves them there with, first, just the mast broken, but then literally splits the whole ship in half. So, damn. So she and Mal are on the run again, and they're doing their best to disguise themselves again, because she's still wearing, her black kefta, so he has to go and get like a change of clothes for her. He goes into town without her initially, and it takes so long before he comes back that she's really starting to panic and wonder if maybe he got gripped up. And let's see, I've never seen a city so crowded with people. No one even gave me a second glance. And he says, I never want you to see you in black again. And he touches the collar and says that in the summer by then they will have found a way to get rid of it. And she has to explain to him that this collar doesn't mean what he thinks it means because of how it was given to her. She has found a way around that. We did need the collar. It was insurance against the Darkling's strength and a promise that someday we'd return to Ravka and find a way to set things right. But what I couldn't tell Mal was that the collar belonged to me, that the stag's power felt like a part of me now, and I wasn't sure I wanted to let it go. And that's interesting because it's written in such a way as to seem sort of sinister, but I don't really feel that way about it. So I don't know, because she says then we'll get rid of it as soon as we can. And I'm like, why can't you explain that it's yours? Why can't you explain to him what you just experienced? I don't really understand it. She says, what I couldn't tell Mal was that the collar belonged to me. Why not? I don't really understand why she can't. She says that like it's just a given that we'll all understand as readers why she couldn't. I don't really understand why not. Sure she can. It's not a secret. Why should that be a secret? It doesn't, it's like, to me, the explanation would be, if anything, an admirable indication of who she is. Her explanation is going to be, the life of this creature actually belongs more to me because I showed it mercy. And I feel like that's something that Mal would really respect and understand. So her saying like, oh, I can never explain. This feels like we're adding another little conflict that we can bring up in the next book to have it be like a problem between the two of them that I don't think needs to be here. We don't need a problem between the two of them. They can be a team that works together and be okay with one another and be fighting the forces of evil. We don't need there to be an interpersonal relationship issue, But anyway, they burn the kefta that she had been wearing, and then we go into after. And it's told in like, what is it, third person? Can't remember the other word that goes after it. But anyway, it's told with them not ever being spoken of by name. The boy and the girl is how they are described through this section. And the deckhands call them ghosts because they're super pale and they just stand at the edge of the ship's railing and stare at the sea without moving. And they don't know that her and Mal are watching for a ship. They're worried that they are being followed. So I'm trying to find the spot. Here it is. The city buzzed with the horror of what had happened in Novokribersk. I hope I'm saying that right. Some blamed the Darkling. Others blamed the Shuhan or Fjerdanes. A few even claimed it was the righteous work of angry saints. Rumors began to reach them of strange happenings in Ravka. They heard that the apparat had disappeared, that foreign troops were massing on the borders, that the First and Second Armies were threatening to go to war with each other, that the Sun Summoner was dead. They waited to hear word of the Darkling's death on the fold, but it never came. To which I'm like, I bet it didn't. You fuck. And it says that the two of them would like sleep curled around one another, and that she would frequently have nightmares, and he would have to hold her and tell her that it was going to be all right. The ship sighs around them. They are alone again as they were when they were young, hiding from the older children, from Anakuya's temper, from the things that seemed to move and slither in the dark. They are orphans again, with no true home but each other and whatever life they can make together on the other side of the sea. So, that is the end of Shadow and Bone. Next book, Seige and Storm. Dun dun dun. So that's pretty exciting. I did like that ending, except for the thing with her not wanting to tell him about the collar. That I didn't really understand. But, other than that. Oh, Jamie, I'm sorry. You left all these comments and I had the book open, so I didn't even see them. He thinks he's powerful because of proximity to power. He can't understand how she can feel what she feels for someone normal. Oh, yeah, this is pretty much what I was saying. How she can have feelings for this normcore soldier. Yeah, this is basically, I agree. And there it is. So, yeah, let me see when the next one is. I'm not sure if it's updated yet because Candace was having a lot of computer problems. That's just really been a trend for all of us, hasn't it? But I'm just double checking when the next one is. Young Wizards, Grisha. Oh, this is Grisha. Oh, yeah, Seige and Storm. What's today? The 12th. Okay, 6/16, 6/19, 6/30 are the next three. And then we're going into 7/10, 7/17. So thank you to Joanna and Jamie for commissioning all of those. Yay. All right, guys. Oh, and Jamie says she just commissioned one today. Thanks, Jamie. All right, guys. Thank you all again so much for listening. I hope that you have been enjoying this coverage. And thank you again to Jamie for all of your commissions. And I will be seeing you again pretty soon with the new episodes. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.